Picture this. You're right in the middle of a heated, intense debate. The back and forth is thrilling, but then suddenly you realize something absolutely terrifying. You are completely, undeniably wrong. The facts just don't line up with what you're saying, and to make matters worse, your opponent's logic is absolutely flawless. So what do? Do you gracefully concede the point? Do you thank them for the correction? Of course not. If you're like most people, you double down. You start shifting the goalposts, you throw out a massive word salad of complex terminology, and you aggressively defend your crumbling argument to the bitter end. At that exact moment, you aren't fighting for the truth anymore. You're fighting for one thing only, and that's to save face. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to decode this psychological trap in 3 simple steps. First, we'll look at the problem, then the agitation, and finally, the solution. Okay, let's jump right into section 1, the problem, the glass mask. To really understand the root of this issue, we have to turn to the pioneering psychologist Carl Jung. He introduced this idea of the persona as the social mask we all wear to help us adapt and function within collective society. Now, I want to be super clear here. Having a persona is not a bad thing. Actually, it's a perfectly necessary tool for navigating society. But the fatal problem, the real danger, arises when you identify so deeply with that mask that you literally forget you're wearing it. You start to actually believe that you are the mask. Jung compared the persona to a transparent glass mask. Think about that for a second. Because the mask is totally clear, you look right through it, and you genuinely believe you're seeing reality perfectly objectively. But here's the catch. Just one small scratch on that glass is enough to completely refract and distort your entire line of sight. So the absolutely crucial point here is what happens to our thinking when we wear this mask. When your inner identity becomes entirely fused with your public persona, every single argument you enter has an implicit, invisible question attached to it. And that question is, will this damage the image I've built? From that exact moment, your honest, critical thinking completely bends and warps. You're no longer evaluating objective facts. You're stuck desperately guarding a fragile piece of glass. Look, I want to pause here for a painfully honest question. Have you ever found yourself vigorously defending a movie, a politician, or even something as totally trivial as a pizza topping that you don't even really care about, and you did it simply because you couldn't stand the smug look on the face of the person correcting you? Come on, be honest. If your pride has ever forced you to defend a totally dumb point, you're experiencing the persona trap in real time. We've all been there, and honestly, it's exhausting. Moving right along to section 2, the agitation, your inner defense attorney. So why is it so incredibly hard to just let it go? Well, it turns out your own biology is actively working against you and destroying your ability to be a rational human being. When you identify with your persona, your brain starts doing something wild. It treats any challenge to your publicly held beliefs with the exact same urgency as a physical danger to your survival. Your amygdala activates, your heart rate shoots up, and your reasoning quality just plummets. You're operating in a full-blown threat response. And neurologically speaking, a threat response is completely incompatible with open-minded evaluation. So what does your brain actually do in this state of panic? It becomes a really shady defense attorney. Psychologists call this confirmation bias. See, your brain isn't looking for the truth anymore. It's only looking for evidence that proves you were already right. It acts exactly like a lawyer who only takes cases it knows it can win. It turns your critical thinking into a mere tool of justification, rather than what it should be, which is a tool of exploration. And let me tell you, the staggering lengths people will go to in order to protect their persona is fascinating. Manipulative debaters will completely abandon logic and start tossing what philosophers call an intellectual word salad. They'll dress their nonsense up in academic language and technical terminology just to dazzle the uninformed observer and look authoritative. But it gets even sneakier than that. Imagine a manager who spots a fatal flaw in a company project. But because her persona is built entirely around being an agreeable team player, she stays completely silent to avoid conflict. The persona trap is absolutely lethal when it disguises itself as morality, peacemaking, or responsibility. This one is a wild psychological reality check. People governed by their persona often look incredibly calm and composed on the outside, but listen closely. Calm does not equal honest. That external calmness isn't inner peace, it's just a social requirement. Deep down, they're internally panicking to make sure no thought or statement deviates from their public image. Just because someone sounds reasonable doesn't mean they're honest. It might just be a very well-dressed lie. All right, section 3, the solution, the obligated to lose framework. So how do we break out of this? How do we shatter the glass mask and stop our inner defense attorney from hijacking our logic? Well, you have to actively train your intellectual humility. And to do that, you deploy a 3-step framework. Step 1, the motive check. Step 2, embrace the obligation to lose. And step 3, the 4-word cheat code. Each one builds on the last to fully restore your critical thinking. Let's break down exactly how you can implement these right now. Step 1 is the motive check. The very next time you're in an argument and you feel that hot, familiar urge to rationalize or throw out a word salad just to win, I want you to stop. Just stop and ask yourself, okay, this argument sounds reasonable, but what image is it serving? The exact second you recognize that your urge to argue is really just your brain trying to protect your social mask, the persona loses its absolute control over you. Awareness is always the first step to dismantling the trap. Step 2 is to embrace the obligation to lose. True rational persuasion requires treating other people as equal participants in the search for truth, not as objects to be manipulated for a quick win. You have to enter every single debate completely open to the possibility that your opponent's reasons might actually be better than yours. You have to accept that based on actual facts and objective reality, you might literally be obligated to lose the argument. And now we arrive at step 3, the 4-word cheat code. Before the threatening evidence even arrives, you must pre-commit to updating your beliefs. You do this by asking yourself 4 simple words. What would change my mind? Listen closely to this because it's absolutely crucial. If you cannot answer the question, what would change my mind, your belief is unfalsifiable. It means you aren't thinking. You're just coping. By forcing yourself to define exactly what specific evidence would prove you wrong, you establish ultimate epistemic accountability. It totally short-circuits your inner defense attorney because you've already set the terms for your own surrender to the truth. Now, if you take absolutely nothing else away from this explainer, memorize this. This is your ultimate psychological cheat code for absolute intellectual dominance. Separate your identity from your opinion, right? Most people experience changing their mind as a humiliating, crushing defeat, but you have to rewire that connection. Because updating your beliefs in response to new evidence isn't a weakness. It is the literal definition of a functioning human brain. When you finally separate your fragile ego from your opinions, you can look your opponent dead in the eye and say, you know what, you're right. I was wrong about that. And let me tell you, their jaw will hit the floor. Because when you do that, your confidence becomes totally bulletproof. A genuine master of critical thinking doesn't need to win every single argument to feel secure. They know that objective truth exists entirely independent of their personal beliefs. So I'll leave you with this final thought. The next time you feel your heart racing in a debate, ask yourself, are you actually fighting for the objective truth, or are you just desperately defending a fragile piece of glass? Drop the mask. We'll be back soon with more insights on decoding the matrix of critical thinking. But until then, keep learning, stay curious, and let the facts do the talking.